This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hey everybody. Hi. Thanks for downloading this, another Confessions podcast from your friends at Radio 2. And they all lived happily ever after. Welcome to a special Confessions podcast, full of special confessions. A whole bunch of stuff that we've dug up from the Crypt.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
The Simon and the Caring Collective. Mine is a holiday confession. We have been asking for holiday confessions. 'Tis the season. Yours, please, confessions@bbc.co.uk. This goes back 13 years or so. My parents were in their 70s and they regularly enjoyed package tour holidays. Now, I'd started to notice as they got older, they were becoming more and more daunted by the journey, normally via Gatwick to their chosen Mediterranean destination. They were particularly concerned about new restrictions placed on their hand luggage. I received many concerned phone calls about how careful they were having to be with not only the amount of liquids they could carry with them, because they were quite partial to taking a pre-mixed gin and tonic in their carry-on. I think those
fantastic.
Different times.
Yeah. Yes, different times.
For the airport weight, but also other items of hand luggage too. My mother was always very thorough and liked to be prepared for every eventuality. As such, she always took with her a spare shirt, a spare top, and a spare pair of knickers, just in case.
What, just in the hand luggage?
Just in the hand luggage. Yes.
Wow, what's she expecting?
Well, I don't know. Anyway,
Wow.
She's just prepared, and she's thorough, okay? Now, it was during one of these frantic hand luggage trauma phone calls, she foolishly mentioned her concern at whether knickers would be permitted under the new restrictions.
Has this been checked? Has this been checked? Good.
My husband and I... I'm going to have to fade you out. You're going to have to call. My husband and I saw the opportunity for an amusing moment whilst lightening my parents' pre-holiday concerns and send them off with a smile on their faces. How hilarious it would be to write to my parents informing them of the restrictions on hand luggage underwear. My husband, a graphic designer, put together a very authentic-looking airline letterhead, and we spent a merry hour creating a formal mail-out regarding tightening of carry-on bag checks. The main thrust of the letter was that the new restrictions now covered items of underwear in hand luggage. Underwear would only be permitted if it was clean, white,
Good.
and less than 10 centimetres by 16 centimetres in size. We created a selection of photos of unacceptable underwear, including Victorian bloomers, Union Jack boxers, cami knickers, and anything with a picture of George Bush on it. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Did you go pants with? I remember now.
Yep.
Well, we chuckled as we popped the letter in the postbox and thought how much my parents would enjoy our little leg pull as much as we had enjoyed making
Gloria.
it. Well, oh dearie me, that's not quite how it played out. The next day I received a very fraught call from my father telling me about the letter and asking our advice. What were they to do? They'd measured all their pants with a tape
Like
measure,
yes.
and none of them met the new airline criteria. Now, says Gloria, my mother's undergarments were not huge, but definitely bigger than the new restrictions allowed. My mother had sorted through her entire underwear drawer and measured each one, but nothing was 10 centimetres by 16.
Nothing at all.
Okay. At this point,
Yes.
I should tell you that my father then explained that he'd gone on to ring the customer service line to try and establish what they should do. Unfortunately, no one at the airline seemed to know about the restrictions or about the letter, which had been sent to regular flyers. At this point, I had two choices. Let them fly, with my mother having to pack a recently purchased skimpy flimsy thong, or fess up. So, what do you think? Well, let's see. What do you think? What do you think Gloria's going to do?
She let her fly. Obviously let her fly.
Do you think?
Yeah.
What do you
The
think?
nice thing would have been to have fessed up at that point.
Yeah, definitely think she bought the skimpy pants.
Do you think? Well, at this point, says Gloria, I couldn't suppress my laughter anymore, and I suggested to my father that he might like to look at the postmark on the envelope and reconsider the validity of the said letter.
Blame somebody. I mean, somebody else could have. Yeah.
And he did. He then promptly hung up on me.
Oh.
It took him all afternoon to calm down, but I'm not sure he ever saw the funny side. However, said Gloria, I would like to seek forgiveness for not only upsetting my parents and in fact adding to their pre-flight stress, but for putting an airline employee in the position of dealing with a knicker restriction inquiry from my father whilst keeping a straight face. So you see, although you might have expected a hard-hearted Gloria to say, Yes, it's absolutely for real. That would be a cruel thing to make your elderly mother get on a plane in a
You'd
thong.
do that, wouldn't you?
Or with a spare thong just in case. Anyway, we'll see what Matt makes of it in just a moment. Anyway, it's Gloria's holiday confession. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's see what Sister
I
Rebecca
think
thinks of it.
Gloria, she already knows that her parents were very stressed about travelling. They're in their 70s and they're very stressed about these restrictions. So to make it worse and to go to all that effort as well to put the letter together and put it in the post, I just think it wasn't really worth it. It didn't have the desired outcome anyway because it just upset her parents even more. And while it was a funny joke, I think it backfired.
Do you think?
I'm not going to forgive.
Not looking good for Gloria so far, but it's always deadly to rely on. What do you
Well,
have there,
I
Dudley?
don't. I mean, it was good for Gloria. She had a good laugh at the time until she had to fess up, of course. And that was in the days when postmarks actually meant anything. You can't read postmarks now, so you couldn't really do this.
It's not deadly.
Goodness knows, I've tried, Rebecca. I've tried many, many times.
Relevant as always. Though.
And as for the airline employee, well, they're paid to deal with that, aren't they? That's what you're going to say, isn't it? That's exactly what they're paid to do. And they probably had a good laugh as well. So I'm going to forgive, I think. I'm going to forgive.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon in the Edinburgh-based collective, before I get started on my confession, let me try to give you some context of what led up to my actions on that particular day in my life. People have often asked me why I want to put myself in a position where everyone can stare and laugh at me. The truth is that it happens to me every day anyway. At least this way there's a scheduled time and place for it. I like to think I'm providing a public service, which is more than some people are doing at the moment. Of course, I do it because I want to be famous too. I think everyone does, really. I started off in a disabled Steps tribute band. We were called Ramps. That was a bit of an uphill struggle. I used to often think about going on a talent show on television just to see the look on their faces when they realize I can't actually sing, or dance, or talk. And this is when it all starts in earnest. It was early in 2012, and I saw that auditions for a well-known talent show were coming to the Newcastle Arena, which was just 10 minutes away from where I live. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have gone along. Maybe I shouldn't have stood in a queue for 3 hours in the freezing cold. And maybe I shouldn't have started pretending to warm up my voice while standing there. But the chance of fame was too much to resist. And, to be honest, I thought I could be in with a chance, because Gareth Gates became successful despite his stutter. In my defense, I really never expected to get as far as I did. Surely someone would question how the hell I was going to sing. But I never got asked. Even after using my communication aid to speak to 3 different researchers from the program while standing in the queue, no one brought up the elephant in the room. Instead, they asked me which song I was going to sing. Of course, the choice was hard to make. Shout by Lulu was the obvious candidate, as was Don't Speak by No Doubt. In the end, I went for I Believe I Can Fly. Fast forward to a few hours later. I was standing in front of the producers of the show who would decide my fate. I could see straight away that they were very confused when I walked in. The look on their faces as I began to sing was priceless, especially as I started to sway along to the words as well. Unsurprisingly, they rejected me without even raising a smile. In fact, they still didn't smile as I walked out and asked them if it was because my voice had sounded too flat. It seems that Sometimes I say it best when I say nothing at all. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness not from the people who work on the show, who should have really known better than to let me into the building. And not from R. Kelly for totally ruining one of his most famous songs for the sake of my own amusement. I never really liked it anyway. I ask for forgiveness for all the more talented people who could actually sing, but didn't get the chance to audition because some disabled bloke obviously had far too much free time on his hands on the day in question.
All right, that's Lost Voice Guy and his... How about that? Top confession. All right, let's see what Sean Keevan is going to say about that. Sean, what do you say to Lost Voice Guy?
Utterly priceless. The Disabled Steps covers band called Ramps. An uphill struggle. That's incredible. I didn't see that coming. I think that anybody who is credulous enough and desperate enough to go and prostrate themselves in front of a Cowell-esque mentor deserves everything they get. To be honest, I have little to no sympathy for these people, partially because Simon always catches me when I'm very hungry and in a very bad mood. So I'm always looking to take it out on somebody. In this case, it is those people who are queuing up outside in the rain to sing for Cowell. I completely and utterly forgive you.
All right, Sean, thanks very much.
And applaud you.
Sister Bobby from the Priory, what do you say to Lost Voice Guy?
Great sense of mischief. Thank you for that, because it actually has been one of my absolute favourites. Also, actually, I'd like to think of that panel and everyone, the production team, letting you through. I think actually that's also a great thing to let you through, to give you every chance. That's fantastic and it's positive. Absolutely forgiven, though, for just making fun of the whole thing. So absolutely, thank you very much.
Brother Matt, what do you say?
The reason why this is inspired is because of the choice of music. And R. Kelly, I believe I can fly. I believe at any point we have R. Kelly being the boss of jokes is fine by me. We had Eva Herzegovina yesterday, or whatever she's called, and tonight R. Kelly, so definitely forgiven just for that.
The Confessions Podcast.
Thank you, Margaret, for tonight's story. Father Simon and the Very, Very Forgiving Collective. I feel shame and embarrassment at even saying those words, dear Father Simon. As will become clear as my story unfolds, I seek forgiveness for a sin I committed all too recently. And for this reason, any identifying information about me must be concealed for fear of me being banished from my job and possibly my country.
Oh, this is good.
Hey, what?
I like this. Already I like this.
I work in the NHS in a job which, although very common, is pretty much widely unknown and definitely extremely unappreciated. I work in the community, visiting mainly people of a certain generation, and thus confusion over my job title is all too frequent. Over the years, I've become accustomed to being addressed as a nurse or a doctor. Now I don't bother to correct the uneducated or the confused soul addressing me as such, having previously made a confused situation even more confusing by attempting to explain my job title and what I do, which most of us in the profession still can't explain in less than 3,000 words. So I won't. One day I was visiting a new patient, let's just call her Betty, a very pleasant but hard of hearing and slightly confused elderly lady. As usual, I introduced myself and my job title, and after several shouty attempts, I believed she'd understood me sufficiently. I completed my assessment and left with lots of reassurances that I would be back the following week. It was unusual that a patient was quite so keen to see me again, but I put it down to the fact that our conversation had, despite the hearing difficulties, been pleasant, and that Betty had felt quite comfortable telling me her life story, which is not so unusual. The following week I arrived at Betty's house, and she rather enthusiastically greeted me with, "Ah, hello again, Sister Margaret. How lovely that you've come back to see me." My immediate thought was, oh, here we go again. I've been mistaken for the district nurse one more time. But I admit that the thought of more shouty attempts to explain my proper job, I can't really explain it succinctly enough, led me to smile politely and say, "It's always a pleasure, Betty." The following 3 or 4 visits passed, and Betty continued to refer to me as Sister Margaret, even though I was not carrying out any duties that could be considered even vaguely as nursing. And I continued to smile politely and made no attempt to correct her. One day I arrived, as usual, at Betty's house, only to be greeted by a woman who identified herself as Betty's daughter. I should explain at this point that I was born and brought up in one country of the UK, but now live and work in another country in the UK, and so my accent is always distinctive to those around me. She's been very, very careful about this. I said hello, and before I could introduce myself, Betty's daughter said, Sister Margaret, thank you so much for coming. Mum so enjoyed your visits and was honoured that you took the time to spend with her, particularly she was never a great believer. And suddenly it dawned on me that Betty hadn't thought I was the district nurse, but in fact mistaken me for a nun. Again I smiled politely, squirming with the thought that I was now about to be found out as a fraud who let old people believe I was in religious orders. I know I should have come clean at that point, but thought that the explaining I had passed myself off as a nun because I was too lazy to explain to this lady's mother what my real job was would only make the situation far worse. Little was I to know that Betty's daughter, and as it happened the rest of Betty's large and extended family, had gathered at Betty's house because she had very suddenly and unfortunately passed away the previous night. Betty's daughter then ushered me into the living room where Betty was lying peacefully, surrounded by various relatives. Silence fell as I entered the room and all eyes were on me. Betty's daughter introduced me and then asked whether I could possibly say a few words.
Oh no.
Matt's head's in his hands, by the way, and has been for a while. I'm sorry, I stammered. I was wondering, she replied, if you could just say a small prayer and lead us all in some words, you know, for my mother. Well, at this point, my upbringing as a vicar's daughter, previously the millstone around my neck, proved all too useful. And I muttered some vague prayer of thankfulness for Betty's life, asked the Almighty to perform his wonders, and gave thanks for the fact that Betty was now at peace. It was hardly pause for thought, but under the circumstances, not bad. I gave my condolences to the family, made my excuses about having other flock to attend to, and left very quickly, never to be seen by any member of Betty's friends and family. But Father Simon and team, I seek forgiveness, not from Betty, who was probably none the wiser, and who did seem to genuinely, thoroughly enjoy my visits. Not from Betty's family, even though they to this day believe that Betty was mysteriously befriended by a nun despite never having set foot in a church, but to the fellow members of my profession for cowardly ducking out of my duty and responsibility to explain my job and spread the word about the amazing work that we do and instead be content with letting people believe I am a nurse. Yours in true reverence, Margaret, brackets not my real name. Well, thank you, Sister Margaret, for this. And as you didn't explain to us what your job was either, except that clearly you do very vital work, and it's clearly very important work, and those who you visit appreciate it very much, whatever they think your reason for doing it is. So Sister Margaret has sent in the confession. Let's see what we make of that. Bobby from the Priory is going first.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because she didn't intentionally mislead Betty, and as she said, it's very, very, very difficult in these circumstances sometimes to explain to some people. So sometimes it's easier just to do the job and then obviously move on. So I understand that. There was no intention. You didn't want to, you didn't gain from it, you didn't intend to kind of mislead someone. And also, at their time of need, when they were at a loss and all gathered around Betty, she was there and she could lead them as ever. So I don't think anybody would really kind of not like her for that and not appreciate her for all the effort. The only problem, just a word of warning, of course, about, you know, the potential for misleading. It could have been messy. It could have been messy. So what I'm saying is, you are wholly forgiven, but just be careful when we mislead.
Be careful out there. Don't go pretending you're a nun, is what Bobby was saying.
Is what I'm saying, just because it could be worse.
Nigel, don't go around pretending you're a monk either. Don't get ideas. You're pretending to be an actor at the moment from the 50s. That's what I'd say.
Card-carrying equity actor. So,
what I like about this story is that it is. I always like the ones which could be an episode from a sitcom, and this is like classic misidentification. You know, she thinks I'm that, and now I'm going to have to actually do a blessing, even though I'm not a vicar. Anyway, Nigel.
None better, Margaret. None the wiser, Betty. I think words I've actually taken from the special words that she obviously used with the flock. She attended and shepherded Betty's flock before attending to her own. I thought it was the only bit when she said that she might have to go off and administer her own flock. I thought she is gilding for shepherding Lily here. But it was one of those things, and being a vicar's daughter, it did come in handy. And it was just one of those stories that got away from her. It must have got a bit of a shock when she went round and Betty was laid out in the front room, but I think she did a pretty good job of it. So you are, Margaret, absolutely forgiven. Well, maybe you should think of taking up orders.
Yeah, well, maybe. Well played, Sister Margaret. Maybe.
Yes.
You know,
Surely this is a case of No harm, no cowl.
Oh,
Boom!
you got there
yes,
first.
got in there straight away. She could have come clean, but then it wouldn't have been a decent story, would it? There'd have been no story if she'd come clean. She wouldn't have written to us.
Do you think people are actually doing these things now just so they can get a confession out of it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I think that's why people are misbehaving. So I'm going to forgive, because obviously everyone was happy out of the end of this, and even that being the vicar's daughter finally paid off for Margaret, not your real name. So well done, everyone involved.
I did think somehow you'd make it Betty's fault somehow. But
yeah, why not? Yeah, actually, yes, it's all Betty's fault.
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Brother Matt is back, which is very nice after his part-time activities yesterday.
Yes, hello.
And Brother Tom Sanders has been invited in.
It's a deep privilege, Simon.
Well, it is actually. Deep. Yes. Would you say you are, because you're on news reading duties?
I am
at the moment. Have you finished for the day? Or?
Yes, I have finished for the day. Actually,
who's taking over at 6?
Yeah, I'm only here because I've got some time to kill. But who's taking over at 6? Nicky Cardwell.
Right, you're only here because you've got time to kill. No, you're not here because you've been invited to be part of the collective.
No.
He's got such a lovely voice, hasn't he?
That was my line. Tom. But no, I'm here because I've been asked. Thank you for having me, Simon.
It's
so refined.
Yeah, it won't last long. You wait. Tonight's confession comes from Boris. Thank you, Boris. Dear Simon and the Collective, I'm writing to ask forgiveness for something that I did many moons ago when I was about 10 or 11. You see, I have an older sister who at the time was always getting me into trouble by telling tales to my parents. Who kissed Jamie Featherston, Mom? Guess. You know your expensive perfume that seems to be decreasing. Older sisters and siblings, there's just so many of them. As soon as we open the older sister category, there'll be many of these. Anyway, Boris continues, I was always a funny child, trying to replace the bar of soap with the one that was supposed to make your face turn blue, but never did, that kind of thing. The local joke shop was my playground. Then one day on a visit to this local joke shop, I spotted a fake spider. It wasn't a tarantula-like spider. It wasn't that big, but it didn't look fake. It looked fabulous. It looked like just the kind of spider that you might find in the living room of your house in a September. So I bought it and was very proud of my purchase. Initially, I didn't know quite what to do with it, but then a thought came into my mind about my sister and getting her back for always getting me into trouble. I knew she didn't like spiders, in fact, passionately hated them. So clearly, what should I do? I knew that she was going to go out later in the evening to a nightclub, and that gave me plenty of time to place the spider. As soon as she went out, I snuck into my sister's room, trying to be quiet and not alert my parents that I was there. I put it on the bedside cabinet. No, it didn't. Then I put it on her beloved record player. Oh, that didn't look quite good enough. And then it struck me that to make it look more real, I would need to stick it on the ceiling. So I rushed out of the room and returned with some blue tack to stick it in place. Standing on the bed, trying to reach the ceiling, I decided the best place for the spider was directly above her pillow. I think so. I think this is rather good. So when she got into bed, she would see it, and I climbed off the bed thinking it was a job well done. Then later I went to bed when my parents told me to, like a good little boy, says Boris. Creepy Boris. The next day was a Sunday where a lovely full English breakfast was awaiting me. I'd totally forgotten about the fake spider, but it quickly came back to me when my sister sat across the table. She leant over and she said, Oi, Boris, I hate you. Actually, my parents didn't look too happy with me either. And then the story came out. Everything unravelled. The previous night, my sister had returned from the nightclub in the very early hours of the morning. She had returned to her bedroom and spotted the spider and screamed the house down. I had heard none of this as I was still fast asleep, but she woke my parents up to tell them to get rid of this huge spider above my bed, and she ordered them to get rid of it. It's definitely a widow spider. They're killers, she had said, apparently. Well, my father came into the room and took one look at it and then made a sharp exit. It was too big for him, so he dispatched my mother into the room to get rid of the spider.
Well done.
Nice one, Dad. So my mother climbed onto the bed with a duster to catch the spider, which she did. What happened next was unexpected and beyond my wildest dreams. My sister started screaming and pointing at the ceiling, shouting, "The spider's laid blue eggs! Look, there's blue eggs across the ceiling!" Which my parents ignored. My mother continued down the stairs with the spider in the duster, opened the back door and threw it out. They then calmed my sister down and the house went back to normal and they all went back to sleep. I hadn't woken up through this entire drama. The next morning, while my mother was in the kitchen making breakfast, she glanced out of the back window and spotted that the spider had not moved from last night. So she went out to investigate and poked it, and amazingly, it still didn't move. She then picked it up and discovered, yes, it was my fake spider.
Made in China, printed on the back.
Probably that's the clue. This discovery didn't stay a secret long, and the whole house knew before I woke up. I don't think my sister spoke to me for a year, apart from saying intermittently that she hated me. Anyway, I don't seek forgiveness from my sister because she deserved everything that she got for telling all those tales on me. Instead, I seek forgiveness from my parents, who are rudely awakened from their sleep in the early hours of Sunday morning, dealing with the hysterical girl and having to throw a fake spider out of the house. Anyway, that's why it's Boris. I think that's why we changed the name to Boris, because it was a nice spider confession. Spider confessions always very welcome, of course, but particularly older sibling confessions. Let's face it, there are loads. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. Sister Rebecca.
I hate spiders, and if someone had done that to me, I would have been furious.
What about your older sister?
Yeah, well, my older sister had done that to me.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that would have been just
combination.
Unimaginable combination. But I think the mother was so brave. I mean, the dad was a coward. The mother was so brave to climb on the bed and get a duster and put the spider in the duster.
That is a bit hopeless.
And then to prod it the next day. I mean, really, good on her. I think that, she was the hero in all this, and I think that I can't forgive Boris for putting his brave mother through all that, and also doing that to his sister. It's just not fair.
Tom the novice.
So he's not seeking forgiveness from his sister,
No.
which I rather like, because she didn't like spiders, but then she wasn't very nice to her brother often as well. Poor old Boris, I think. But also, it's not so much a confession, it's just a very, very good story. And as the little boy who once bought one of those little plastic dog turds and liked to place it at various points around the house at the age of 8 or 9, as I'm sure you can well imagine.
Yeah.
Absolutely forgiven. Boris, you are absolutely forgiven. It's a very fine story.
Oh, outstanding, Tom.
You won't be coming back.
Well done.
Coming back.
Well done. There are debuts, and then there's Tom
I think
Sanders'
that's
debut.
fine, isn't it?
I think that's okay.
Yes.
Let me just.
Well,
is that okay?
Good job we're on the air.
Post Sophie Grubble, is that okay?
Post-mortem later.
if the umlaut's in the right place.
Brilliant. I, like Boris, I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. I once slept through a fire alarm at a hotel, so I can absolutely empathise with not being woken up by his hysterical sister. But this family doesn't sound too bright to me. How did they not work out that it's a fake spider? Spider is, falls into the duster and just stays there. Spiders, my experience, they tend to scurry around a lot.
I bet you don't have an experience, but you make your wife deal with it.
Yes, my wife to deal with such matters. No, I don't. No, of course I don't. I deal with all the spiders, real or fake, in my house. And on this occasion, this family does not sound too bright, so I am going to forgive, because Boris was clearly the brightest spark in that box.
Scathing.
Right, so this is down to IQ.
Yes, it is. Unless, of course, the reason why I wasn't woken up was because I live in a particularly big house, and therefore it becomes a class thing, in which case I definitely forgive him, but not the family.
Well, the screams couldn't be heard in the West Wing.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Attention podcast listeners, the British Podcast Awards has opened entries for their Listener Choice Award. Can you believe the Confessions Podcast, at the moment, is award-less? With your help, we can fix this. Acting together, united, with one common purpose. Head to BritishPodcastAwards.com/vote. It's all one word. British Podcast Awards, that's one word, .com/vote. Search for the Simon Mayo Confessions, select it, enter your name and email address, click submit. I mean, how much easier can it get? Now, obviously, we're in no way trying to fix this public vote.
Are we not?
Yes, we are. Merely making you... I'm just saying, it's like saying, here it is.
Here it is.
Do with it as you wish. If you want to follow all those and vote for Test Match Special, obviously that would be ludicrous, but it's entirely down to you. It's a free country.
The Confessions Podcast.
Gather round, turn the central heating on, and here comes another drive time confession. This one comes from Angie. Thanks, Ange. Father Simon and the Clement Consortium. My confession goes back over 15 years to a previous job, which, although interesting, was ripe for a bit of livening up on quiet days. I worked in a museum in Manchester that had a lot to do with science and industry and the start of the railways, which has narrowed it down quite a lot. One of the galleries had a recreation of the world's first Passenger Railway's first-class booking hall, which was located in the original room itself. On entering said room, you broke a light beam in the doorway which triggered a CD player which played sound effects to give it an air of atmosphere. It was very, very effective and very popular. And these included the sound of the horn announcing that the train was ready to depart, the noise of the locomotive chuffing, and the animated chatter and footsteps of the passengers. These passengers were represented by several mannequins of various ages and sexes in period costume, and on a dull day, they were also fair game. Switching the head of the man on the counter with the head of the young girl gave you a 4-foot-high, green-caped and bonneted version of Arsenal and England goalie David Seaman, complete with big trademark moustache, which was a show-stopping look for anyone in 1996, let alone 1815. Anyway, I digress. This particular day, one of my colleagues, let's call him Jeff, brought in the CD that accompanies the book to the very popular TV show Shooting Stars. The book contained questions so you could play your own version of the show at home with your mates whilst enjoying a small sweet sherry or two. The aforementioned disc contained the extremely entertaining Pub Sing Around brought to life by Vic Reeves. Before our day officially started, we played some of the CD in the brew room and laughed at the totally brilliant awfulness of it. Then we were off to give the galleries a clean, and after opening for the day, assist the visitors. We foresaw a quiet day ahead, so after a couple of hours patrolling the galleries and trying to stay awake, myself and another colleague, Marvin, decided to liven things up a bit. As much for ourselves as the visitors. A few minutes later, after a bit of jiggery-pokery, we were hiding behind a door in the aforementioned first-class booking hall, peering through the gap. Soon a small group of Japanese visitors came in through the doorway, and instead of the clip-clop of hooves and the blast of a long-lost horn, they were greeted with something like this. Well, I don't know quite what they thought was going on, as their expressions were a mixture of confusion, fear, and total bafflement. But we stood behind the door, watching through the crack, muffling our laughter while tears ran down our faces. They stood looking at the mannequins, heads on properly. That's the mannequins, not the Japanese visitors. And then, after a short conversation between themselves and some pointing, went up the stairs and into another area. We roared with laughter, struggling for breath whilst crying, but we quickly reset the CD in readiness for the next visitors, still giggling at the ridiculousness of it. Then we heard voices. We jumped back behind the door, and then... Ain't really too many hair I will you comb in my head tonight. Is this a 19th century ticket hall? Or not? Hey! Anyway, Father Simon, we were bent double, crying with our hands over our mouths to stifle the laughter, and thankfully the students who just entered the room found this equally as amusing as we did. This kept us entertained for a good while. We changed the track for variety, of course, and it kept the boredom level to absolute zero. However, when it comes to forgiveness, I don't need it from my former workplace. We'd done our cleaning and nothing got broken, and we livened up the visits of many people. I do need to seek forgiveness, though, from the Japanese visitors, who must have wondered what the hell was going on and what Vic's wailing had to do with the world's first railway station. And yes, I do have a copy of the book and the CD, and I put it on just to cheer me up. Angie, who's in Greenfield. Anyway, it's the kind of thing that you would be tempted to do, especially if putting on a CD and it's triggered by that beam of light. And then it fires off all kinds of noises and images. If you are bored, maybe you're going to give it a little bit of comedy for extra effect. Let's see what the committee make of this. Sister Bobby, first of all.
Well, as a general wash, I'm definitely up for workplace hijinks. So it's very easy. And the other thing, when you think about, they're just trying to present a natural scene. Who's to say there isn't a pub down the street with someone playing the Joanna? So I don't think it's really far away from the truth, to be honest. I think you're absolutely forgiven.
Unlikely that they would be playing Genesis or Ultravox on the piano.
I know, but you're forgiven. No harm.
Strictly speaking, Phil Collins, but, I think
I think you're fine.
No points at all.
Yes, so I think this definitely works, but only if the people who are tripping the light beam get the cultural reference. So I'm not going to forgive for the Japanese tourists, because the Japanese, what on earth is... You may as well just be playing any just random sound, because I don't understand what's going on. Whereas people who were around at the time were watching Shooting Stars, and I loved that pub singer thing that they used to do there, they will have got it and they will have found it hilarious. So I am not forgiving just because you should have picked and choose who you do the thing for.
Okay, all right, that's very good. And that's it from this particularly special edition of Your Confessions podcast. We put them all together because the team wasn't in their normal position for this week. So we gave you a whole bunch of old confessions. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back to normal next week.
The Confessions Podcast. Go in peace.